It's an important day, both for the two unions, for Communicators, and also for Multimedia International. And as the afternoon unfolds, you will see the importance of this event, both in terms of our input, but also in terms of relaunching Multimedia International at a global level. And this is a very important step, as communication more and more is so important in life, but also in consecrated life and at the level of our congregations. So we'll begin. Everyone is most welcome who's here in the hall at UISG, or all those joining us online. Most welcome to this afternoon. And we'll begin with a moment of prayer. Thank you.
Gianluca, prendo io la parola. Allora, cominciamo il nostro incontro.
So let's start our meeting. Let us place ourselves in the presence of the Lord of the Word, the Lord of that accompany us, the Lord that speaks in the silence of our hearts, the silence of everything. This God, the God of the Word, who speaks in our hearts, in those hearts that are open to listen. Give us, O Lord, to be communicators that are humble and faithful, craftsmen of peace, artisans of peace, and builders of bridges. In this time of synodality, teach us, Lord, to listen and not to talk, to seek the truth with our hearts, and to describe the beauty of the gospel with respect, clarity, and love. Make our words a beacon of hope. Make our tools something that can help the people to encounter one another. And may our work always serve your church, the church that is on the move, who always pay heed to the voice of the Spirit.
Just for a moment, if you can greet the participants at your table and make sure you know who everybody is, because we'll be working together this afternoon. So just take a moment to turn to your companions, and if you don't know one another already, to introduce yourselves, just your name and your congregation. And if you already know one another, just say hello once again. Io sono Patrizia, no, Irlanda, no, non degli Stati Uniti. Those of you who are online, please write where you're coming from so that we will know that we're reaching the ends of the earth. So write your name and your congregation and your country. And so we'll turn to the work of this afternoon. Here in the hall, we have already created a record. I think this is the first time in the 11 years that I am here at UISG that I have seen more men than women in this room. So that, I said to Mario, that must be a sign of something new. But I look forward with you to the input this afternoon on synodality and collaboration between men and women collaborators. This is an important theme, not only for the church, but I think for all of you as communicators. And so I'm going to ask Mario to introduce Professor José María Laporte.
Sì, buongiorno a tutte e a tutti.
Good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon, we are going to listen to a brief introduction to the theme Synodality and Collaboration among communicators, both male and female. And we invited Professor José María Laporte, who was born in Madrid, Spain. He's a priest, and he's part of the prelature of the Opus Dei. He's a dean of the... No. Oh, he's a former dean. He's a former dean of the Faculty of Social Communication and Institutional Communication of the Holy Cross. He was also consultor till 2021 of the Dicastery for Communication of the Holy See. Currently, he is stable professor of Fundamentals of Institutional Communication at the Faculty of Communication, Social and Institutional Communication of the Holy Cross. So let us leave him the floor, and thank you for being here. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Al tavolo mi sento un po' sempre. Allora, devo dire, inizierei con due cose.
I would like to begin with a couple of things, let's say.
Ok, quindi così meglio, benissimo.
All right.
Ho preparato degli slides, spero che forse possano vedersi nella camera.
I prepared all the slides. I hope you can see them. So I would speak for about 20 minutes. I will share with you a few ideas. But if I had known, I could have prepared this. But I started with a strategic mistake about what I was supposed to address as a theme. But why? Because at the beginning, I thought that this presentation was for feminine congregations. So you will see that all the photos are women. But it is quite interesting to see that, because I actually wanted to talk about this, that is how communication in this field is a strategic mistake, because initially when I spoke to Sister Therese, I thought that I would address feminine congregations, but this is quite interesting because it somehow takes stock. Everything that I'm going to say can be summarized in one sentence, that is, communication is a strategic element of governance. It might seem very easy, but it is very important at the same time. So communication, as I'm going to do, I will also include also briefly, some brief masculine examples, but that would be a failure. That type of communication would be a failure. So I'll switch to Spanish.
I had been asked to speak Spanish because it seemed that there were many people speaking Spanish. I'm so sorry that I started speaking Italian, but well, I will speak for 20 minutes and I'll try to say something interesting for you. Well, I'd like to speak by saying why I am here and why do I expect to find here. This is a question you probably have. Why are we here? What are we expecting here? Why have we gathered? Well, this is very interesting because communication is a strategic element, as we were saying. So we have to think. If we're all here, it means that I will get some ideas and I will be able to share them with all of you. So how can I manage to have communication as part of the government? And communication means offering the communicative dimension of decisions from the government. This is what I will be talking about today. So I would like to start by speaking of the social context, but and why? Because I think that the social context let us think of what we're communicating and in which context. So there's a real possibility of having a war. We're seeing it in Ukraine. We're seeing a disregard for international law and human rights in war context, but not only in those famous places, but also in Africa and Latin America. There are many conflicts we don't see in the news, for example, and also Rwanda and Congo. And we're not seeing it in TV, but there are real contexts. There's an artificial intelligence, very scary, because it's having an impact on us. And there's also a technological convenience. And we see that there's being a strengthening of electronic context, but we're seeing a diminution of the personal dimension. There are many relationships, but at the same time, we're seeing people are being isolated because we're all connected online, and that means isolation too. So there's a need for historical arrangement and historical repair, but we can see that this is an element that will change our lives, our way of living. So it is very important to have a religious vacation, and we need to reflect and to think what are the consequences for the religious vacation if we have a context where artificial intelligence is part of the culture. And we can also talk about the identity and current vacations, but also future vacations, because young people come from a different generation with cell phones, and there's also a huge emotivity. They want to learn, but at the same time, there are some aspects that have changed when compared to the past. So this means there are different ways of presenting the vocation. This can be applied for people who have been working for many years. We see a generational conflict that has always existed. All people think that these new things are difficult, but now with new technologies, this is much more evident. Regarding the perception of religious vacation, well, we can think what means being religious for new generations. Well, we talk about women's self-realization. We also talk about freedom. I am free because I have to follow some rules and vows. And how is this religious vacation perceived? something that is beyond material things. And which is the role of the church? Well, it means what kind of religious vocation. Every one of you have a different founder with a known identity. And sometimes it seems there's a competition between them, but it's clear that we need to transmit the original message. And then we also have action versus contemplation. Some religious people think that many people can be attracted by them. So it doesn't make any sense because we have a functional society. So there have been some changes, but we also have action from religious people around the world. Difficult situations attract young people that desire to help and do something for it. And I think this is very interesting because many times we think that a religious vacation is something impossible, people are not interested in. Yesterday, ANSA published some data in Italy. So 70% of young people between 11 and 19 years old wanted to have one or more children, but it seems we thought it was we lived in a society with no children, and then we see it's not very consistent with the social context. Then let's see different aspects. These are some recent news. For example, a nun that says that she works in a convent and she explains that she's contributing. And well, we also have another another article here talking about a tea with the sisters, and this is an original initiative of a parish to encourage vacations. It was published. Also, an article on Talita Kum, and we see that religious people seem like strange people. It seems that there's a lot of curiosity. So we need more communication. So we need a good communication. Some time ago, a religious owning student dorm, told me that young people were also asking her about her vacation, and she was surprised because she was asked a lot. There was also a Muslim girl who said that she wanted to start working for a congregation, a religious congregation. So it is also important to reflect on perception, how this consecrated life is related to activities. We need to think how we want this perception to be transmitted in a communicative context. We know there are many platitudes, norms, vows, which repress and diminish women, and also material and social empowerment. Sometimes some congregations seem to be very well known because they empower women, and some others are not so famous because they focus on different things. So, well, we need to know which are the platitudes and which are the ways of communicate in order to avoid this kind of platitudes. I'm giving you some examples of an interview the sister that talks about how in India they were able to do some things for women. There was also a girl talking about her life. She says, I was looking for protection. I didn't have a mother because she was an alcoholic. She didn't pay attention to me and was kind of absent in my life. The lack of maternal presence, as I saw the rest of my friends had, made me feel very lonely. I was clearly a teenager, susceptible to being co-opted. So the woman who had become my protector invited me to a retreat, and there was a novitiate there. So I made up my mind. And well, this is a way of presenting congregations, and we see different situations, different contexts. Sometimes they think these retreats are only for girls who believe they have a religious vocation, but instead they are for any young women who seek to know God's will for her regarding her life. So it depends.
Me gustaría ahora, entrando en algunas ideas y en estos últimos 10 minutos, pensar.
In these last 10 minutes, I would like to talk about a communicative context. We've said how communication can be a strategic communication way. And it's also about transmitting to different people these government institutions. So how can we transmit these institutions in a good way and adequate way? There's been a disappearance of traditional media and also a reformulation of the media. Today, newspapers are online, are being read less, and there's been a reformulation.
Un aspecto muy positivo para todos ustedes.
This is very positive for all of you, and it is related to the repositioning of fake and viralization, fake news. I remember there was an article talking about priests, and it was fake. And how can we know it? Well, we can look at the institutional page, and I think today's context gives us an opportunity to update our websites. We need to have a site where people can contrast news. So I can think, what's my strategy? How can I manage my website? Some websites different podcasts or also religious influencers. I'm thinking about religious people in France. There was a boom because some influencers went to church because they wanted to receive ashes. So there was a question on the internet, what should I say when I receive my ashes? And it was some sort of, it was new for all these influencers because they were getting a space they didn't have before. And this can be contrasted with forces of discourse control. We see that in some continents there are prohibited means of communication, some channels cannot be accessible, and some topics cannot be addressed. So we need to realize that this also has an impact on us. We can think of some international conflicts, for example. And we also have the reality and perception of religious vocation. And this is very useful. What does a religious vocation mean? We have already said that sometimes it is difficult to transmit. And
Pensaba mucha gente que a lo mejor Internet era el modo de conseguir vocaciones.
people thought that internet was the best way to communicate, but they realized that, okay, it can help us disseminate the information on our congregation, but vacation is a different thing. Vacation is forced directly, in a direct way. And storytelling, what about it? Well, we need to think on how can I tell stories, how do I feel myself in my own congregation, which are my ways of communicating. Sometimes we think that all people are not interesting anymore. I recently saw two grandchildren who were looking at their grandmother, and she was telling them how she had met their grandfather and how they got married. And I was thinking, why are they so interested in what the grandmother is talking about? Because their generation said, and they have different interests, but instead it is very interesting for them, and they are attracted by this storytelling. Okay, we're heading off to the end of my presentation. Well, there are some trends. There's a lack of hope for the future. Also, an ideological bipolarity in different contexts. We have irrational debates. Sometimes we're asked to say, are we progressists or not? So I think there are different contexts, and actually what we need to do is to communicate in different colors with various shades. We are also seeing a new spirituality, a new religiosity among young people. We saw there were many adults that had been baptized, and many adolescents too. We're seeing this trend in Great Britain and Belgium too, and this is very interesting because they're minorities, but something's happening, of course, and we're seeing it, we're noticing it, and this will have good consequences on us. So we should stop thinking on platitudes, and we should start thinking instead of this new religiosity, these young people who want to get closer to the church. And we do also have the education, personal and social relations. Technologies have led to different problems regarding how people think and what do people wish. Now we see a picture on a congregation whose job is to train jobs. We see a nun who's taking care of these dogs, and I think this is very interesting. And well, we can think, where is my congregation going from the governmental point of view? So where is my congregation going? Where are we going? Which is the relationship between our governance decision and the way we communicate them, outwardly and inwardly? We need to take care of this communication because this is not such a simple task.
Historias bonitas. No, es parte de la estrategia. ¿Cuál es la
This is a part of our strategy. What is the communicative dimension of my last general chapter? So we should think, what have people understood? How have we transmitted it?
la comunicación en
Has someone taken care of communication, or there was only a simple document?
cuál es la
Well, so we have to think of vacations and on our mission and also the future. So we talked about the government and about the communicative dimension of government. And now we should ask ourselves, what is the relationship between my institution and government? Sometimes we think we're not being listened to, but we're not being heard. But actually, we should ask ourselves, what kind of relationship does exist between government and our institution? We should take care of our websites.
¿Cuál es mi funcionamiento? Porque a veces
What is my communication strategy?
a veces es nuestro
Our functioning, our way of working,
programa de acción.
which is my agenda and my action program. Sometimes people governing do not understand us, maybe because we didn't create a plan for our strategy. Maybe we're talking about colors, and well, strategic decisions need strategic proposals, and sometimes people taking care of communication do not think of these strategies. And we do also need to think of contents. When we see people taking care of contents, people will be happy to read our contents. I hope today's meeting will be useful for you. So the identity and spiritual dimension presented in a strategic way in a materialistic and technological context. We do have a materialistic context, very technological, and that's where we need to integrate government and communication. We do need to rethink communication from a strategic point of view. Government for some specific contents. So a decision needs to be explained. Otherwise, it will be seen as an imposition.
Algunas preguntas.
Now, some questions. I want to go back to the first two questions. Why am I here? Why do I expect to find here? Why are you here? And, well, thank you so much.
Muchas gracias. Grazie mille.
Thank you very much, Professor Laporte. And now
Alle domande.
we can have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions to Professor Laporte, do not hesitate.
Sì, Quando fate una domanda,
And when you ask your question, please state your name, where you're from.
Mio nome è Renee Pomartico, vengo dagli Stati Uniti.
I'm Renee Promatico from the United States. And I would like to ask,
I want to ask, how should international communication respond to questions related to social context? Because we can communicate the identity and dimension of the Institute, but there are also many questions around the world regarding the church, the social doctrine, and also justice. So how an institution and not an individual should talk about all these matters?
Entiendo perfectamente que
Yes, I understand that there are no answers for everything, but I think that
significa que hay un interés por determinadas
the question means there's an interest on some concrete things. So, for example,
cosas. Bueno,
sports are very important for a society, no? And I think the context is very important because that's where our audience receive our message. And context help us understand the cultural dimension and also the hierarchical and existential dimension of people. Some people say there are TV series and also music that are in competition, but I see this context differently. We need to think of the question. When I say that we should consider the context, what I mean is that which kind of interest is there behind the question?
la pregunta y respuesta, tratando de identificar una pregunta que la
So it is important to identify a question, but I prefer to go beyond that when I speak of context. I think social context is very important. For example, if someone
quizá le tendrás que decir
grows up in a family without a father, we cannot say God is a father. We should say God is the father you would have liked to had, but you couldn't have. Or maybe there are some other contexts where people do not know how to pray. So we need to take this into account. It is important. There's a society that needs to be purified, and some contexts cannot become Christian.
¿no? Porque había gente que se mataba en algunos de los espectáculos a los
St. Augustine, for example, wanted to avoid some situations where people were being hurt. But it is also true that some contexts cannot become Christian.
se qualcuno di quelli che segue attraverso
if any one of you following through the web connected online has any questions, please feel free to write them on the chat so that we can read them and ask them to Professor. Any other question?
Sono Padre Carlos dei Missionari
I
Scalabriniani.
am Father Carlo from the Scandinavian Missionaries. You talked about the communication between government and mission, of government and mission. Could you share with us some good practices and also some mistakes to avoid when we move away from the communication ad intra, so for our congregation, and embrace the ad extra communication, the communication to the outside?
Ci sarebbero tante cose da dire. La prima io direi è che ogni volta di meno c'è
The
questa
first thing that I would say is that there is less and less this sort of distinction in the sense that we have to take for granted that the communication ad intra is also communication ad extra.
entiende lo que nosotros decimos lo viene a saber a través de la web, no internamente.
What we say is understood or is is understood by on the internet. So it is important to explain that both things are related. We can think of bigger audiences too. But I think this distinction is very difficult to establish because many internal audiences have access to news by means of external audiences. So I think we need to integrate both things. It is important to integrate. And another important thing is the context. For example,
tener en Londres para una persona en Mozambique puede ser un escándalo.
a general aid in London
Pobre, que es el
is different from a general aid in Mozambique. So I think the context is essential in order to have good and bad practices.
hay situaciones extremas
When there are extreme situations,
de una congregación
let's think of
o
a congregation that has suffered from
hacer una comunicación
money problems or other kind of problems. Well, in this case, I think if we don't need to disseminate the problem globally, if it is a local problem, we need to focus on the local point of view. I've read different newspapers with lots of information, and I think there's no need to communicate all this information.
las cosas más amplias tienen que
Instead, bigger things should be communicated around the world.
congregación, ¿no?
Sometimes there's also news being filtered, and this can have bad consequences to the congregation
Una
because this is a way of giving priorities. There's no time today, but I could give you many examples.
yo le podría hacer llegar links y cosas muy concretas.
Maybe I can send you some links.
Therese,
Let's ask Sister Teresa to read some questions that we have received from those who are following online. Yes, first of all, we have a person who would like to ask a question. Pietro on Zoom. Microphone, please.
Voilà Pietro, tu puoi parlare, grazie.
You have the floor, Pietro.
mi sentite?
Okay, can you hear me? Good afternoon. I am Pietro Rossini from the Xaverian Missionaries. Thank you for giving me the floor.
Missionaire Saveriani. There is a point. I
Hanno sempre contrapposto queste realtà
these realities, governance and information have been opposed. About
mi viene da chiedere, non si rischia poi di ridurre questo solo a un'azione di marketing, cioè di semplice promozione della
I think that this might simply be, reduced to a simple marketing operation. As communicators, this is part of our job, of course, but at the same time, we also have the responsibility to encourage the institution to move beyond what it already does and what it proposes so that we can actually achieve those those domains that go beyond the governance, the government of the institution, because otherwise, as communicators, we simply amplify what the institution or the superiors say, and that's all. So we lose sight of the prophetic aspect of being a voice to the voiceless. And I believe that these two are tasks specific to a communicator, also to a religious communicator. So I would like to know what you think about it. I believe that it depends on our congregation in the sense, in my view, communication, communication, for instance, in the radio, on any communication means, in a way, we are autonomous and we are also free. Here we're talking about the institutional government and institutional communication. So institutional communication is connected to the government. This doesn't mean that it is not creative, because often you have to provide the same information, but it has to be adapted to the people that are in leadership, because they are different. So you also have to be prophetic in the way you invent things. I like to tell my students that they are as interpreters and translators, because in a way, those in government, those in authority, you have to translate what those in authority want to say into a story. And I believe that it is a very creative job. And it also has to do with our spirituality, with the spirituality of our congregations. Because if we do not do that, I'm thinking about some religious or some priests. If you receive a mandate and you have to be online and you have to preach, fine. You have to preach online, fine. But if you devote 8 hours per day to online work or to prophetic work online, and the people in the parish, the parishioners, they are not even heard, I think that you seem to communicate, but you do not serve your mission. So in my view, the theme of communication has to be connected to the mission that the religious has received, because otherwise, I cannot be a journalist if my mission is a different one. I might collaborate on any communication means, I could do a lot of things, but I am a member of my congregation, I am a member of my institution, and then I am a communicator. When you start to say, oh, well, no, the government and us, you see, the communicator has to think that if he's thinking about us and the leadership, then there is something wrong there. And also, he has also to communicate things to the government. That is also part of our work of communication, and that also requires a lot of communication. For instance, if a bishop in a diocese thinks that the first of Friday he would offer free lunch to all the priests in his diocese, what he is communicating is you can come and see me every Friday, every first Friday of the month, whenever you want. And he is communicating, so no priest will be able to say that the bishop doesn't want to see me. So from the communicative standpoint, you have to actually try and understand what it means for your congregation. But then if you work for Famiglia Cristiana or for other magazines, then there's a different approach. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor José María Laporte, for your presentation and for taking the questions. Unfortunately, we will not be able to answer the many questions that we are receiving online, but we promise that we will organize a meeting on the basis of these questions, and we will try and answer these questions by addressing the themes that you proposed. Thank you. Now,
Alcune parole in italiano,
I will start in Italian, though my Italian is not a beautiful Italian. I am French. We are not all perfect.
Je vais surtout parler en français.
I'll speak French mostly. I am Brother Hervé of the congregation Paul Hermel for Italian Formation, a congregation devoted to formation. And I've been living in Italy several years, and I have tried to integrate myself, and I've been carrying out several ministries, bursar, president, and someone asked me to present the Multimedia International and its past, as MMI is like an old lady aged 55. MMI was born in 1970 in the US, Massachusetts, but very quickly, I think that the C of international multimedia was installed in Rome due to the founder. At the first logo of the association, here it is. And this association was founded by Father Stephen Bamberger, who has been president for several years. And the goal of MMI was promoting the use of media, all media means at the service of apostolate, religious life. And since the beginning, MMI operators had the intuition that religious and consecrated members should help other religions in the world of communication. I can say that since 11 years in MMI, that these efforts has been encouraged. This association allowed us to receive funds and assist projects. In one word, MMI would like to respond the advice of the Second Vatican Council to help with all media evangelization. At the beginning, there were 4 congregations with their founders. At the beginning, Father Stephen Bamberger, and very quickly other congregations joined, and there were 20 religious families that were the basis for MMI association. 25 years after, 67 congregations joined the project. In the years 1990s, this was a turning point with the first, with the start of computers, and MMI has developed the importance of the media at communication level. The goal was supporting congregations in using technical means. At the beginning, religious members were very poor compared to computers and technology. In the last 20 years, we had 13 presidents, 13 MMI presidents. We are religious. We interpret MMI as a service. Melted and have merged and created one group. An important date for MMI is July 11th, 2013, when the responsible of MMI decided to make MMI acknowledged as an official association acknowledged by the Italian government. Among us, there is Sister Mary, a Marist sister. I don't know where she is. She was one of the founders, the founding members. 3 congregations were founding members of this association, officially acknowledged by the Italian government. You can give a look to the slide and read the names of the congregations. This was a very important step that allowed MMI to be independent at financial level with a bank account. MMI was able to invest, to take funds, have a tax code number. Another important step was COVID time. All the actions carried out by MMI were focused on online workshops. You can see on the slide some examples. We have carried out very practical formation sessions, for example, on artificial intelligence, protection of children. Everything was focused on communication. In 2024, the slide that summarizes the event that took place in summer 2024, when the acting president, Father Luis Guedes, went back to the Philippines, and MMI was without president. I was the legal representative, but there were 2 religious members in the board. One was a Nigerian, another one was a Latin American, and they left MMI board afterwards. So Kim is in Padua, and 2 lay members. After 10 years, we always had lay collaborators close to the congregations sitting in the board. It is a good example of synodality. This is the history, what happened in the summer 2024. I can say that I was alone. So these are the questions. What have I to do with MMI? It was not my son. So I started my pilgrim path, and I spoke to the representative of USC. I spoke to Mario and the responsible of the Jesuit communication, and they all encouraged me, saying that the strength of MMI is being an acknowledged association, that we could not leave. So after these meetings, a temporary board was created with the support of WISC and USC, a board of communicators in Rome, and we tried to open new tracks for MMI, future MMI. We wondered, we focused on the issue of the renewal of the statute in January 2025. A law asks acknowledged association to revise their statute and make it consistent with Italian law. I'm thinking about financial issues. This was a reason for slowing down a little bit our path, and we should work with the support of a lawyer, and this needs time. Then we focused on the future vision for MMI. What mission for MMI? We may already outline some strategic plans for the future. I go back to 4 points. It is written very small characters. The mission. Mission is developing and supporting communication at the service of consecrated life. It is a wide mission, but it is the red wire for MMI through all means, with all means, the mission. Vision and mission are linked. They go hand in hand, and mission should be widespread and reach all responsible and operators of communication, proposing expertise, advices, and means and places for meeting. I go back to these 4 words in Italian: advice, formation, different kind of formation, tools, very real, very specific tools, and space, places. We need to meet, and the experience we live this afternoon is the proof that we need a meeting in presence. This is the mission. Some strategic guideline without developing, but just to give you a glance on future. We should be a consulting association. I've carried out the experience for 6 months. I've met young people. We put together our know-how and expertise, and the result was a richer communication. So first point being advisors able to give expertise, the expertise and know-how that we can find about communication. Then formation, different kinds of formation, technical, basic formation, workshops, webinars. Why not proposing basic courses that could not be organized in a one-year time, but courses of 4 or 6 weeks. Communication teams have very different levels. Some teams need being empowered and have more technical and refined tools at the level of equipment, cameras, translation, service, and communication in general. One word about something that is already on the pipeline, something very important for us, the support of a digital platform that may give a face, an official face to consecrated life. You know it very well, as I know. Consecrated life has many faces. It's very rich. There is already a platform that is already developed, well developed. MMI would like to be the support of this platform with a vocational dimension. And in conclusion, we would like to offer opportunities and places for meetings and collaboration, proposing venues and opportunities of meeting. I have come to the conclusion, past, present, and future guidelines about the life of MMI.
Thank you, Hervé, for your presentation, most especially for keeping this important association up and running that we are here to celebrate today as we try to relaunch it. And this is really the reason why both the USG and the UISG have decided to support this association and Hervé, and that is why we have organized together with Hervé this meeting so that we could actually draw a future together. Perhaps Sister Pat would like to add something.
I have known MMI since I came to Rome in 1998. I'm a long time here. And in the 90s it was, and into the 21st century, it was a flourishing organization. And like with many things, COVID changed the nature and shape of what was happening, and particularly as meetings were held online and not in person. And then when the president and others left Rome, there wasn't a cohort of people to carry on MMI. But I think also, thinking of what Professor Porte said to us, there's a new context, there's a new moment, which is an important moment in the life of the church, but an important moment in consecrated life. When we do talk about synodality and collaboration, when we do talk about lay people and religious men and women working together, because many communicators now employed by religious congregations are professionally trained laymen and women. So we have as our sisters, priests and brothers. So we have a new moment of coming together. The focus of MMI in the past was on Rome. the focus on MMI in the future is the world. So in different parts of the world, some of the original organizations that supported communicators are no longer in existence. So it seems to be a moment where there's a whole new opportunity for us to work together across the board, but also at the international level. So for me, UISG on occasions began to run formation programs online and in person, but more and more we were convinced that that wasn't our role. And also the activities that would be available online and also in person. So I think I just want to put on behalf of the executive of UISG and on my own behalf as the executive secretary, that I really feel this is an important moment for all of us, for all congregations, to take this moment and breathe new life, but new life in a whole new context. So that as communicators, all of you can be more effective and also more collaborative.
Thank you, Sister Pat. I just say that also USG is completely, we agree completely with you. And because we don't have time to say more about that, it's so clear that we think that Multimedia International merit a long and good life. So now we want, parlo italiano, adesso.
And I'll switch to Italian.
Vorremmo.
So now we would like to give ourselves the time to work in groups for about 20 minutes, both here and online, and will be very, very important because your work will be important, because what you tell us will be the basis for the future of MMI. So we would like to ask you to talk about a few issues, and then please send your proposals, send us your proposals so that we can gather them, and on the basis of your proposals we will move on with our work. So now the technicians will divide you into groups, will divide the people connected online into groups, whereas those who are here can take the time to talk. You can talk about your desires, your expectations about the future and the work that the MMI should carry out for our congregations.
Multimedia International. Grazie.
Thank you. And then, at the end of this exchange, the secretary of every table, of every group, will need to write on the chat a few thoughts, the results, the outcome of your discussion, and then please send your notes to the Secretariat of the MMI. You will receive the MMI Secretariat's email. Whereas for those who are here, well, you can take the time to share around the table.